Cool, thanks, John. Thanks for setting it up so nicely. I mean, preparing this, it was just, the whole thought around it was, how do you really love well through this message? Because it is a bit of a doozy, and it's like, it's been one of those, you know when you prepare or read something and it just hits your heart, and you're like, oh, can I preach that? Because do I really believe this? And so I really feel like some of this has really changed who I am as well. It's been amazing. And super challenging as well. So I would contend, and I know this is quite a bold statement, but I'm fairly confident that I know more about COVID than anyone else in this room. Now that could be, I know, there's some prideful sin right there. Okay, I get it, but let me explain, let me go a little bit further into this because it'll make sense in a second. So I'm a futurist and a contingency planner, all right? And I love to predict and plan and imagine the future. And I love to ideate. And then, of course, if I ideate, I want to get someone else to execute, right? And while they're executing, I'm coming up with 3 new plans which are better than the first one, and I just frustrate everyone, but it's cool. And so in the organization that I work in, we're expanding across the world, and I just see this vision for what we're doing. And I work furiously, well, I was working furiously, before all of this happened, to try and see that come into fruition. But like so many things, COVID came along, infected the world, and everything just kind of crashed, right? But as an organization, we had this plan. We saw COVID coming, we got together, and we researched the heck out of COVID. Okay, we got data scientists involved and actuaries. We collected and analyzed tens of thousands of data points to try and predict where COVID was going and how it was going to affect the world. We researched cures. We worked with a company to figure out how to make ventilators. And then we did research on all the different lockdowns across the entire world, worked out which were the worst ones, and then we fed 100,000 people in those countries where they just couldn't get any food. So we had this plan, right? We were managing the data, and we were controlling what we knew, and we had a plan, and then I thought travel would start again and I could get back to life. But as of January, I checked, I wanted to go somewhere. It wasn't that I couldn't go anywhere, there just were no flights. Right? I was completely out of control. Like I could not do anything. I was just completely stuck. Even the governments were not moving, and the decision makers in the governments were blocked from view. We couldn't even get to them. And so as much as I wanted to control the destiny of what we were doing, I couldn't. I was completely out of control. And I know that most of you as well were probably in similar situations, sitting in front of your computers, doing Zoom meetings, hour after hour after hour, and I was just chatting to my project managers, and they were saying how they were stuck inside and they couldn't get out, and we couldn't get anywhere. Now the problem with this was it left me feeling ridiculously anxious. Okay, now what if I couldn't do my job? Would that still mean they would want to employ me? Okay, what if we couldn't get to the people that we wanted to help and we missed them and they fell through the cracks? What would happen to them? What if our funding ran out and now this whole thing just collapsed and my job would be gone and everything would just end? Now I'm fairly confident that all of us have been in that situation, whether that's through this COVID period. I mean, it could be your finances, it could be tragedy. Okay, that's happened a lot. It could be your relationships, your business. Pretty much every sector of our world has been affected. I mean, it's one small virus, but it's actually infected absolutely everything. So our world feels out of control, and we feel out of control, and that tends to make us freak out. I mean, people have been on edge. They're still on edge. I mean, our emotions are on edge. People are, it's pretty crazy. We're feeling out of control. That's because staying in control is a comfort to us. If you log on to News 24 or anywhere, you just see a plethora of articles on the predictions of the economy, the predictions of COVID, the predictions of where our government is going. Like, we love to be in control and understand where we're going, and it gives us comfort. And that's in our DNA. We want to see that. We want to be in comfort. Well, why is this all relevant? Well, it's because we're going through that series called The 7 Giants. So far, we've been looking at look good and be right. But this giant, the giant of stay in control, is probably the most dominant of them all. Just working through some of the material there that we've had around this series, this one kind of forms the center, and everything else flows out of that. If you are out of control, all the other ones just seem even bigger, you know. So much, I don't know if any of you have read the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant. This isn't the Friendly Giant, though, all right, but Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl, if you watched the movie or if you read the book, it's great, but he's got some of these really nasty giants with names such as Flesh Lump Eater and the Bone Cruncher and the Man Hugger. And these giants love to destroy humans. But this one is one of the biggest and ugliest, and the one that has the potential to do the most harm. But instead of give you Roald Dahl, let's go to the Bible, because this is a sermon. So we want to talk about real stuff that comes out of the Bible. And so we've been talking a lot about the Israelites, right? So as the Israelites had left Egypt and they head towards Canaan, the promised land, and they stand at this border, this land that's filled with milk and honey, and they're looking forward to this thing, and they look up at their giants, the giants that God had promised that they would be able to destroy. They look up at them, and the Bible describes it like this. It says, these were the 7 nations greater and mightier than the Hebrews. Right? The Israelites knew that these giants were bigger and nastier than them. Okay, it was really a big task for them. One of these nations was the Hittites, and their name literally means terror. Okay, they were giants who brought fear and confusion and discouragement. Now, one of the things about this, so many of us, and really, as I was going through this, me included, we stand at that edge of that promised land. But to be honest, we kind of put one foot in and we put one foot out, and we kind of rock in between these two areas. And not because we don't want to live in this beautiful place prepared by God, but because we want to hang on to what we want. We want to have control of the scenario. Right? As soon as we cross that border, we're out of control. Right? We have to face those giants. We have to face things that are bigger and heavier and nastier. Okay? And because we understand the here and now, and we can predict what's going to happen. In the same way the Israelites wanted when they left Egypt, right? They crossed the Red Sea. I mean, God had done amazing stuff. They just left slavery. The first thing they wanted to do was to turn back. We're like, whoa, there's a desert out there, but I know what's over here. I'm going to go back to Egypt. The first time they got to the promised land, the border, they got there and like, whoa, too many giants. I'm going to turn around. Okay, and they spent 40 years wandering around, waiting to face those giants again. Then again, there's also some of us who love our giants. All right. For those, when we did the look good, it's like we cuddle up to the flesh lump eater. When we make our image our identity. And we canoodle with the man hugger when we feel we know everything. We're willing to put other people down just to be right. And we ride bone crusher because we want to be in control. Okay, but these are horrible, nasty giants. Okay. So what is this giant of stay in control, and what does it look like? All right, so this giant is insidious, meaning it just gets in to everything, and it comes in many different forms. It insists on having its hands on the wheel, to be in control, to steer the ship and ensure things are headed in the right direction. This giant believes that if he is in control, if he or she is in control, everyone is safe and the results will be guaranteed. Just work harder, just do more, just make sure you have your finger on the pulse. The giant of staying in control is about creating and controlling our own little kingdom. It's mine, my precious kingdom. And woe to you if someone should get in the way. Now, the essential tenet of this belief is that this giant considers itself God because he can control the outcome of everything and rules over this little kingdom that you've created. Now, you may not think it applies to you, but we're going to go through some examples that I think will really speak to you. I mean, when you think about this, you think of that guy. When I think about this, I think about that guy, right? He's arrogant and he's in control and he thinks he knows what's going on. But when you start to dig deeper, you realize how this gets into everything. So as I worked through this material and reflecting on my life, I realized how much I kind of embrace this giant a bit. And so we're going to do a little Ryan roasting through this thing, and I know some of it's going to speak to you. But it's not all doom and gloom. All right, I really think, particularly with this giant, we can really do well in some areas, and some areas we just don't do well. I mean, we see this with the Israelites. So once they crossed the river into Canaan, in some areas they smoked it. Like they crossed the border, they hit Jericho, they do their thing, the walls come down, they win the battle, and then a few months later they shank it. They make deals with the wrong people, they let people go, and they just absolutely mess it up. And I think we're much the same, right? We can really do so well in some areas and stay in control and letting our control off to God, and we can also just do so badly at this. But the thing is that God very rarely changes us all in one moment. Our character is built over a journey, over a period of time, and He will work on us in different ways as we start to leave and give control over to different things. So here's some examples, just so we see if this will speak to you. Okay, so the first one is business and finance. So when finances are tight, the first thing I tell my wife is, don't worry, I'm going to work harder. All right, I'm going to work longer hours, I'm going to come up with new ideas for generating income, and I'm going to figure out how to manage the money better. I'll ensure that we have the right savings, and when I'm doing that, I'm thinking about how cool it would be to have a bit of extra cash. Now, there's nothing wrong with being really wise with money. In fact, it's biblical. Like, we need to be wise with money. But there is something wrong when we start to exclude God from the equation around our money. And we hedge our bets on two things. One, our ability to work, which I can promise you can be taken out in a second. And two, the economy and the commodities and the stock exchange. And we know that those can crash in an absolute second and ruin everything. Basically, it comes down to our heart and our conscience. Why are you thinking that way? And are you building your own kingdom? Or are you preparing and helping to advance God's kingdom? The Israelites had nothing in the desert. They had no home, but it took them 40 years just wandering around where God had to provide their every need every single day for them to be able to face their giants. There was this trust that He built over that time. Now, in some ways, I'm still trying to stay in control in this areas. In some other ways, we've done okay. Like, there have been times where we needed to do a medical procedure. We had no cash. We could have taken out a big loan. I was in favor of the loan. Shell said, no, trust God. Always trust your wife. She's the barometer. And we did that, and God totally came through for us. And it was that little step of faith that we just tested a little bit, and God rewarded that test, and we were able to fulfill more and more faith from that. The other big one for a lot of people is health. So I like to look fit, and I like to feel good. All right, and I must admit, a lot of my identity is wrapped up in my ability to do sport, and I really love that. But God has made sure that I can't keep that. For 4 years, I had a horrendous back. I walked around like a cripple and was addicted to pain meds. And then when I traveled in Mozambique, I got cerebral malaria and almost died. And then another time I was traveling in Africa, I got some strange disease that ended up on my back for 3 months. And then I got cancer and had to take big shark bites out of the back of my legs. And then I got COVID, and then I got tropical worm disease. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. No, I'm probably the cleanest oak. I've got all the antibodies you can possibly find. And I wanted to control my health, right? Which is wise. So I ate less sugar, and I work out, and I go running, and it's cool. But it took all of those things for God to really change my heart, to say, God, I take every breath because you give me breath. And my body belongs to you. And you can, it's been proven that you can destroy me, not that He would, but you know what, my health can disappear, my ability to work can disappear in an instant through no fault of my own. It can just happen. Where was I? Okay. It basically comes down to my heart and the conscience and the kingdom that I'm building instead of God's kingdom. See, many years ago, and I still say this every day, I tell God that He can do whatever He wants to me as long as it brings me closer and makes me more to Him and makes me more like Him. Now, that's a big prayer. I would suggest you pray it, but be ready because God likes to answer that prayer. See, the problem is that I'm not like a piece of clay. You know, in the Bible it says, oh, he's clay in the potter's hands. No, that's not me. That is not me. I'm a piece of granite. And I need rough tools and a hard hand. It chips me away, and it's painful. It really is painful. Like, I know many of you are the same. The thing is that God uses those challenges, and they can be a blessing for God because He wants to create something beautiful out of your lives. Not a king or a queen in your own kingdom. He wants to create a son and daughter in His kingdom. He really wants to mold you into that. Okay, let me give you another one, which we struggle with because we've got kids, and that's parenting. All right, if you think that you are in control of your kids, you are under an immense illusion. No matter what you do, you can be in the best space ever, and then they'll do something crazy and completely infuriating. And you just think to yourself, what have we done? Haven't we done the devotionals? Haven't we done the pep talks? Haven't we disciplined them well? Why would you bite your sister like that? Like, what's the point? It's just we are out of control when it comes to parents. And my wife and I have realized, like, we will try our best. Listen, be wise again. Read the books and listen to good advice. But ultimately, you've got to trust your parents over to God. You cannot be solely responsible for their salvation and the way that they're going to be brought up. So that's another area. But I could go on, like your spouse, trying to control your spouse. I mean, your future, your business interests, your relationships. Here's a big one. How about your temptations and your addictions? For people in here who have some of those issues, you'll know that you cannot strong-arm that. You need God to be able to get rid of your temptations and your addictions. You have to give those over. All right. In some areas, you may feel like God's really got them. In other areas, you just want to hold on to them as well. Like, and we tend to pick and choose a bit. So, how do we know if there is something in your life that you are struggling to lose control over? The easiest symptom is to know that you have a giant is worry and anxiety. That's the biggest thing. If you feel like you're out of control of something and you haven't given it over to God, the first thing that's going to come into your heart is worry and anxiety. And we can see this in our world today. If COVID is a pandemic, anxiety is a second pandemic out there. We are one of the most comfortable yet anxious age that's ever existed. And this has formed a whole bunch of other issues. I mean, anxiety causes sleep disorders, substance abuse, eating disorders, IBS, just tons of other stuff that comes out of this. Stuff that, because we're anxious, and it appears that the more we have, the more anxious we have become. In other words, the bigger the kingdom we built for ourselves, the more we fear that we're going to lose it. So how do we lose our kingdoms? Because that's kind of what we want to do. We want to be embraced in God's kingdom. We want to lose our little kingdoms. So what does the nature of control look like? Well, sometimes I just feel like God should just take control of stuff. It would be so much easier, including me, and then everything would be better. The problem is that this is a paradox, meaning on the one side, if we were to say to God, you get complete control of everything, we would resent Him for it. We'd be like those little children looking for the loopholes, looking for opportunities to break away. And every time He exerted His control over us and said, no, you can't do that, we would feel resentful about that. And on the other side, where we've got it currently, we feel like, God, there's so many things that are going wrong in the world. We say, well, God, why haven't you got more control? And we curse God for the lack of control He has. And some people disbelieve in Him because of the pain that they've experienced, because of the pain that they see, and because people can be utterly evil. But now, there is, with God's character, there is a scary reality to all of this. It's scary but beautiful. Now, before I say this, just don't accept it or reject it. I want you to take this home. I want you to let it marinate and think about it tonight or whenever you want to think about it. Because I'm not trying to control you. Although I know that pastors and preachers would love to control the people that they're talking to, right? I mean, they love to give a message and everyone just be changed. But everyone who stands up here and preaches, or anyone who teaches, has to give that over to God, give that control over to God and say, I'm going to do my best, and God, you've got to work on hearts out here. They have to give away that control. So I want you to be open-minded. I want you to process this, and this is it. See, God is actually reluctant to control. And the kingdom that we're pursuing, that little kingdom, the one where we're in control, he won't touch until you show evidence that you want him to take control. So what does this look like? Well, Jesus gave us some examples. He's great. I mean, he's always giving us these really good stories. They really try, and I love scripture, right? You can dig all this stuff out. And he talks about finding the kingdom of God. And the first little parable story he tells is about this guy who's running around in the field. He randomly digs a hole, I don't know why, and he finds this treasure chest, right, full of amazing treasure. And he covers it up, and he runs away, and he sells absolutely everything just to buy this piece of land, and he comes back, and he said, that's what the kingdom of heaven is like. It's like finding this treasure in a field. And the next story was similar. There's this guy, he's wandering around the market, he finds this pearl, it's of great value, and he runs home, he sells absolutely everything, comes back, buys the pearl, all right? And Jesus was saying that's what the kingdom of God is like. It's like finding those immeasurably valuable things and making the decision to give up everything to gain that. But here's the thing. The person seeking that kingdom makes the move towards the kingdom. It's an active invitation for God to do something. That guy had to go and create action in order to get the kingdom of God. He didn't just stumble into it. He had to go and actively seek it. Okay. So I can say that I want God to have control over my finances and future. But if I'm unwilling to entrust God with my well-being, I'm showing that I don't really want God to take control of that part of my kingdom. And the scary reality is that getting to grips with this giant will always require some form of sacrifice. It could be trusting someone with your emotions. It could be with your finances. It could be changing the way you parent. There's a ton of different applications for this. But it's always going to require giving up something. So an example is of this in my life. All right. So Shells and I, we ran a little ministry where we took tons of people off to crazy music festivals to tell people about Jesus. Okay. But this was, at that time, it was really, really hectic for us. And it was amazing. We saw amazing lives changed for Jesus. But the hardest thing about the whole experience was year after year was raising the money we needed to run this ministry. So each year we grew, and each year we needed more money. So we had 100 volunteers, and we had to feed and house them for like 5 days. If you guys have ever been to Opikopi, you know it's like crazy. They actually call a place where you camp Mordor, and that's pretty much what it is. Okay, it's fun, but it is Mordor. Plus, we had to get all this money to run the ministry. And I remember one year, just the stress of getting the money, my back went out. I couldn't move my neck from stress and anxiety. I was working into the night, plus another job. I mean, I had another job, plus trying to get this done. Every night, just trying to control the heck out of this thing. I'm going to make this thing work. I was contacting people and organizing and stressing about cash. And as God always does, he provides everything there in that moment if you're trying to control in the last second. I mean, we were driving to this place, still buying food. It was mad. And it's during those moments where I can tell you this, if you're trying to control everything, there's no peace and freedom. Have you met a CEO of a large company who has peace and freedom? Because he has to control this stuff, right? It's hard. Now, the following year, I was reading this book about a missionary who was going across England, and he gave all his funding ways to God, and everything was provided for. So I thought, and with the prompting of God, he works in different ways in different times. With the prompting of God, I already thought that I should try this, right? I'm just going to give this all over to God. But it comes with an enormous sacrifice. Like, what if this didn't work? Okay, so we planned for the biggest Opikopi ever. More volunteers, more of everything, bigger expectations. But this time I promised to tell no one about what we were doing and ask no one for money. And I just want to say, he led me into this. I'm not saying that's always the way to do it. I'm just saying he led us into this thing. Okay, it's important. It's an important interception there. But within a couple of months before this thing happened, we had every single little bit of cash. Not only that, but he provided all the people. I didn't even have to work that year. I just rocked up. And everything was done. It was amazing. We saw the best thing happen. The problem was that in that process, decision-making process, I had to make a sacrifice. And that was that, first of all, we had this thing that had been going for years, and the church kind of needed this. My reputation with the church could have been absolutely destroyed. Our reputation with Opi Kopi and with other festivals that we worked with could have been destroyed, and we could have been excluded from that because they relied on us. All right? I had colleagues, and those relationships could have been ruined. And if that had happened, everyone would turn back and said, "You were unwise, first of all, and you acted stupidly, and I hate looking stupid." Okay, I'll try and control that. Okay, and I had to relinquish control of my little Opi Kopi kingdom that I'd built and had to give it over to God. I had to lose control of that kingdom. All right, so what does it mean for us? How do we take this forward? So ultimately, this all comes down to how we view God. This is the most important thing. If this is all you hear, then this is all I want you to remember. Okay, when we want to give control over to someone, we have to trust them. We have to have trust in who, if it's your spouse, whatever it is, you have to trust them before you give them that sacrifice. Okay? And how do we trust God? Really, really well. We have to spend time getting to know Him. You don't trust someone you don't know. You have to spend time in His Word. You have to spend time learning who this person is. You have to spend time talking to them. That's the only way that you're going to be able to give over control to God. And that's ultimately what He wants. He wants to have that relationship with you so that you freely give that stuff over to Him. He wants to give the peace and the freedom. And there's no peace when you don't have control. See, we need to see God as a really faithful Father, not as a control freak. Right? And isn't that the definition of faith anyway? I mean, that is the definition of faith. It's like us seeing something and putting our trust in it, not being able to see what's going to happen and come out of that. Okay, He wants us to willingly give Him control over our lives before He will control it. See, one of the biggest decisions we can make as eternal beings, because we're going to live forever, wherever that's going to be, is that of salvation. All right? And in that moment, a lot of you would know, you said, I cannot save myself. I'm going to give this over to God. I'm going to give everything, and we entrust that to Him. The warning here, though, is that we don't all get changed in one go. Okay? We don't fully believe that in one moment. There is a test, though. See, when we say we receive Christ as our governing authority in our lives, He says that we now need to produce the evidence that we believe this. There's different ways of saying that. He says one of them is, my disciples will show fruit. Their stuff will come, really good stuff will come out of their lives. And in James, it says, I will show you my faith by the stuff that I do. Okay. He wants to be allowed to take control, but He'll never force it onto you. So what is this evidence? Every small step we take to give Him increasing control in our lives. It almost never happens at once. It is that journey. And when you first meet Jesus, whatever, you're like, it's maybe something really small. It may just be a couple of words in your vocabulary that you think, maybe I should exclude those going forward. And so you kind of change that. And once you give Him control of that, He moves to more complex stuff until you're 100 years old. And then you realize I still need 1,000 years to get to where I actually want to be. But thankfully, we'll be in heaven at that point. But the journey is liberating, and you have the ability to decide on the speed that this happens. It's your sinful habits or your desire to have more from God will determine how you change. And He wants to, He will try, He'll give you stuff in your life that He'll try and guide you in particular directions. But He says, I'm going to wait for you to give up the control, and then I will take it. See, although God is the author of our salvation, the way you change is determined by you. And you have to give up the control and trust Him that He is a good and faithful Father that He says He is. So read His Word, listen to His promises, and get to know Him better.
Thank you so much for joining us. You might be asking yourself the question, how can I take this further? Firstly, you can send us your contact details to cindy@centerchurch.co.za, where we can include you in our online connect groups and you can receive our daily devotional. Secondly, You can hop on our website where you can access previous sermons and find out more about who we are at Center Church. Thirdly, if you consider yourself as part of Center Church, we want to thank you so much for your ongoing financial partnership. The banking details are on the website. Thank you so much for joining us and hope you have an amazing Sunday.